All right, there we go. So our first speaker joining us here on Note Camp 21 is you may have heard him as being the co-host of the Not Your Average Financial Podcast. He is a rock star in the windy city of Chicago, but working with investors and clients all across the country. I don't know, are you a South Sider or a North Sider fan? Are you a baseball fan or not?
I can't cut out half the audience right at the start here, Scott. So I'll leave you all in suspense. I'll leave you in suspense. Yeah. Chicago sports is awesome. I love it, and glad to be on today.
Yeah, we're glad to have you on here as well, Mark. So do you want to take questions as we go, or do you want to save them for the very end, bud?
Yeah, great question. We'll add them to the queue. In fact, we'll have a few chances for folks to win a gift card prize. If you listen carefully, there might be some pop quizzes that I'll be asking you guys. So send your question in as they happen. And then toward the end, we'll accumulate a couple. We'll have a few Q&A at the end too.
Perfect. Well, I think you probably got a PowerPoint presentation, I know, but I'll let you bring it up there. I'll tell you what, guys, when I had Mark on my podcast last year, and then we had you on, we've talked a couple different times, absolutely blown away with what he's going to share with you and show you how to write the title of your thing is how to write a contract with your future self. And I love that, especially the book behind you, How to Bank on Yourself. And we're so excited to have you here, Mark. Thank you so much for being here at Note Camp, bud. All right.
Yeah, my pleasure, man. So I'm going to get everything going. Hopefully you guys can see my screen here, seeing the right monitor. Is that right? Okay, cool. Yeah, so yeah, this is about building really an asset management and wealth building strategy that you can count on. Think about it. If you could go back to February of 2020, did you know then what you know now about what was about to happen in the world economy? So that's kind of what we're going to get into today. How can you write a contract with your future? So if you're in a hurry, the first thing to write down is this link. Go to bit.ly/lake growth. That's bit.ly/LAKEGROWTH, bit.ly/lake growth. And by the way, if you do that, if you fill those out, and by the way, we're going to have a couple of keywords that I'm going to be saying as we go through this presentation. If you can write down those keywords and email them to us, I'll send you the email address, or we'll tell you the email address at the end of this presentation. If you can write down all 6 words in the correct order, as I drop them, you will get an $50 Amazon gift card just for writing these 6 words down and sending us an email. That's how easy it's going to be. So you can be entered into that raffle giveaway to win that if you write down those 6 key phrases. Okay.
You're giving away money for 6 keywords. What's up, man?
trying to keep it creative. So again, all you have to do is write down those 6 words and then wait till the end of the presentation. We'll give you the right email address to send those 6 words to. So let's get into it. A couple of footnotes to keep our attorneys happy. These are important, but I'm not an accountant. I'm not an attorney. I am a certified financial planner. So we're going to be talking in those terms today. And the first thing I want to say is you guys are in the right place. You're with Scott. You're with an incredible team of people here. So hang around with people who remind you of your future, not your past, not your past. You know, if you guys have ever seen the bucket of crabs, you know that if you try to escape that bucket of crabs, your buddies are just going to grab it, pinch at your knees and ankles and pull you right back in. So you're with good people here today that are helping you soar. So, you know, just being here today proves that you're on the right track and wanting to improve yourself. It's, for goodness sakes, it's a beautiful day. It's a middle of the day here. You could be out on a beach, but you're here to improve. So let's do that. If you're looking to grow and scale your business, upgrade your personal life, if you want to unleash your financial potential, if you want to have cultivated and rewarding relationships, or even get in your best shape, right? And more. It takes a desire to improve, to have a better future, to write a contract with that bigger and better future. But there's some sinister villains in the way. In fact, there are 2 universal laws that are impacting all of us. Like right now, as we sit here or stand here, there are 2 laws in the universe that impact our life. And those laws are the law of gravity and the law of entropy. In other words, things that pull you down and things that rip you to shreds. And guys, we see gravity and entropy all over the evening news, all over our news feeds, you know, the doom scroll of your evening, right? You see bitter strife between classes of people, between races, ethnic groups, haves and have-nots, political divisions, goodness, genders, so much more. We don't even need to talk about it. It's so pervasive. In fact, Mother Nature herself is bent on just destroying us with viruses, climate catastrophes, the fundamental nature of our aging bodies, for goodness sakes. Scott, I'm reminded of the phrase, life is like a roll of toilet paper. The more you use it, the faster it goes. And that is absolutely true, not just with our aging bodies, but our relationships too. They feel the effects of entropy. If you don't develop your relationships, you'll drift apart. Your marriage, your good friendships, whatever. Personal development too. It's like waging war against gravity, just to be a better version of yourself today than you were yesterday. I'd say your business, your investments, everything really is impacted by gravity and entropy. There's no such thing as a passive business. That's the myth. There's no such thing as a totally passive business, because if you just walk away, never come back to it, never pay attention to it, it will eventually dissolve, and other people will come and grab that cash out of that business. So the law of gravity pulls you down. The law of entropy tears you apart. Not exactly a rosy picture to start a presentation, Mark. What are you doing here? Well, good news. I got your first keyword. So for those of you who made it through that, you get the first keyword. The first keyword is gravity. So write that word down. Gravity is the first keyword. So again, left alone, the universe seems hell-bent on ripping us to shreds and pulling us down. That first keyword is gravity.
I promise you, Mark is a very popular guy, a very positive guy too, guys.
That's right. We're getting to the good stuff, I promise. So what are some of the ways in which our financial life is impacted by gravity and entropy? Here's a nice little list right here. I'm curious, I'm reading a few of these here. There's market risk. There's liquidity risk. There's tax rate risk. Guys, put into the chat, anybody put into the chat one of these that seems like that stands out to you. Maybe it's especially dangerous. Maybe it's especially jarring, or maybe you've been impacted by this particular risk in the past. Just put into the chat one of these risks that means something to you and see what happens. All right. Thank you. All right. We got health risk, liquidity risk, timing risk. Yeah. Loss of spouse risk. All of these are huge. All of these could change your life in a moment and more. A financial elder risk. That's a big one. Yeah. Financial elder abuse. One that caught me today was this one here of unexpected financial responsibility, where parents or kids move back in. You thought you were empty nesting, you could start saving for retirement. And then all of a sudden, boom, the kids move back in, or mom and dad are needing some extra help financially or medically or otherwise. Super important, guys. All of these are impacts on our future, whether we realize it or not. And as Niels Bohr says, prediction is very difficult, especially if it's about the future. Okay, so it's a nice quote, but it has dramatic ramifications. Nobody knows the future. But what does gravity and entropy have to do with me and you? There are an infinite number of risks that you can see just walking out the door every day. So where is the hope? Well, I would say that humanity's unique gift, our very special spot in the universe, comes from our ability to envision a bigger future. And that's where the hope is. In the midst of gravity and entropy and everything else, we all want to improve ourselves. So first of all, congratulations on taking that first step. You've almost locked in a better future just by your intentions, but there has to be more to it than just that. So, I'd say the next piece to that is, how do we actually enshrine the desire for a better and bigger future? How do we talk about our future in a way that helps us move forward? And the answer is a contract. The contract is the promise and the commitment to a future. And think about it, from a financial contract level, where can you imagine a financial contract with your future, where you had your outcome determined before you even began on the project? How many real estate deals have you done that went south? How many investments have you bought into that didn't turn out the way you thought? But if you think about it, the contract is as old as human civilization. And without the contract today in your dealings, financial dealings, what hope do you really have? So I was having a conversation with a real estate investor just a few weeks ago, and he was very proud of his accomplishments. He had built up a pretty nice, sizable real estate empire for himself, 10, 12 properties, all of them fully paid off. And he had renters in all of them. And he was going to make about $200,000 after expenses on these properties each and every year into the future. So he was flying. He was doing great. And, we talked about how he loved his real estate because it had a tangible aspect to it. He could see it. He could touch it. He could work on the mortar and grout. And so we talked about it, and just having kind of a comfortable conversation. I said to him, well, hey, what is it that really, gives that real estate value? Was it really the bricks and mortar and plywood and all that? And I said, well, what if you didn't have the deed to the property? And what if you didn't have a lease agreement with those tenants? What would happen to your empire? And he didn't even have to think about it too long. He said, well, if I didn't have anything written down that those properties were mine, and I didn't have any agreement written down with the tenants, then all I would have is squatters' rights. Whoever had the bigger shotgun would own the property, essentially. And that's exactly that's the exact truth. Real estate is only as tangible as the contract that underlies it. So the contract is really the bedrock of our civilization. And that's the second key word, guys. So write down keyword number 2 is contracts. Contracts. Okay. Now, I was walking through, I'm kind of a nerd. Scott, you probably already knew that, but I was walking through a museum here in Chicago. And
we're all note nerds on this thing, dude.
Rock and roll.
Good company, all right?
Well, hey, speaking of contracts, I was walking through a museum here in Chicago. There's a really cool one on the South Side, University of Chicago campus. There's this Ancient Oriental Institute museum. And I was just walking through, checking out some really cool stuff like cuneiform tablets and pyramids and pictures of pyramids and mummies and all that. But along one of the walls was this really long parchment. And I'll just zoom in here of what this says. Down at the bottom was a placard that said annuity contract from 300 BC, over 2,000 years ago. So this is an incredible find for a financial nerd like me. Annuities, are just contracts of income. That's all they are. They're just paying you a paycheck. In this guy's case, he's probably a Roman soldier and working for Alexander the Great or whoever. He brings this contract home, shows it to his spouse and his kids, and he's like, guys, I'm set for life. We're set for life. I'm getting paid by the empire. I'm getting paid by the government for the rest of my life. And that's an awesome asset. That's a contract you'd want to hold on to. Now, I'm not here to talk about annuities or whether or not they're a good idea. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. But what I really want to focus on is that contract concept. Imagine what it would have been like, how much pride you could have if you were the guy walking in with that contract in your pocket. So even if you ran out of money, you'd never run out of income with a contract like this. So let's talk about how you'd write a contract with your future today. You may not be as wealthy as the Roman Empire was in 300 BC, but you can set up something that enables you to write a contract with your future. And it's a tactical system. It's not just mindset stuff. But I will just mention that, Sir John Hartgrove said, until it's on paper, it's vapor. So in 1985, Jim Carrey, before he became a famous comedian and actor, he wrote himself a check for $10 million for acting services rendered. And he put that check somewhere where he could see it every single day. And that put him in the right mindset to have a future that was bigger than his past. So again, until it's on paper, it's vapor. But he didn't just stop with writing himself a blank check, basically. He didn't just stop there and hope and pray and then go back to the factory. No, he got out there and he shook hands and he made real deals with real people and put real money and real time into real movies that made real money that enabled him to sign that contract or sign that check and sign that contract. So, money and contracts are a relationship you have with others. And it's built on trust at the end of the day. So it requires a relationship of trust, just like the contract. Every dollar bill in your wallet is like a little contract with somebody else saying, good job, well done. And that's what money is all about. So where do you keep those contracts today? Those dollars, those contract dollars today? Most of us are keeping our money in amateur retail investment products. And that's what I call them. It's kind of a harsh saying, but amateur retail investment products. What are things that I refer to as amateur retail investment products? Who wants to pay retail? Well, that's where you get the highest fees and the highest, markups and everything. What are amateur retail investment products? Well, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, index funds, ETFs, target date funds, all the things that are, kind of riddling inside your IRAs, 401ks, and brokerage accounts. So too many financial products restrict us, like this plant, this dead plant here that was restricted by that little pot. That plant obviously needed a bigger place to live, but it didn't have a nice spot for it to live. So what are the constrictions, or what are some of the ways in which your money could be just squeezed to death, like you see this plant doing here? The first is fees. And according to the Department of Labor, a fee of just 1% on your IRA, 401k, brokerage account, any kind of management fee on your retirement accounts will zap 1/3 of your life savings over 35 years. That's according to the Department of Labor. That's messed up. That's messed up, that the investment advisor or the financial institution could take 1/3 of your money guaranteed and leave you with no guarantees. The second restriction on your plant is volatility. Volatility. Okay, so here's a pop quiz. We're going to give it to the guy or gal who gets the closest answer. Where do you think the average mutual fund investor over a 30-year period, where do you think that investment advisor got returns? Like, let me say the question this way. What was the real return of index fund and mutual fund investors over the last 30 years in the stock market? Now, remember, that would be the 1990s, great bull runs and crashes of 2000 and 2008. But over a 30-year period, if you bought and hold your investments over 30 years, give me a percentage. Give me a percentage. What rate of return over 30 years would the average equity fund investor get according to third-party research? Somebody read the screen. Good for you. You get the answer. Good. I'm seeing all sorts of answers here. 20%, 12%, 8%, 6, 12. Well, the one who read the answer gets the prize. It was Sherry Goetler. I hope I said your last name right. I think she said it, or Sherry, I believe you said it first.
Woo,
okay,
Sherry,
great.
that's
Nice. Julia, would you mind chatting Sherry our email address, and we'll get her a $50 Amazon gift card, please? Awesome. And by the way, this gift card thing only lasts for the people who are live on this video right now, by the way. So just heads up, I see it's being recorded, but just so you know, you had to be here live, guys, to get the prize. Okay, so, and by the way, third keyword is volatility. Third keyword is volatility. And that's what the problem is with most investors. We experience volatility, and that means we underperform the market. The market over 30 years has done whatever, 10, 11%. But real investors get beat up by volatility because we're buying and selling at the wrong time, and we're going up and we're coming down. Okay, so that's the massive mistake the average retail investment products make. The third and final one is taxes. The biggest selling point of 401ks and IRAs is that you get all this money into these investment accounts before you're taxed on it. But tax deferred does not mean the same thing as tax free. Tax deferred is not the same thing as tax-free. You know, Scott, I don't want to defer my root canal. That just makes the problem worse.
Ouch.
Yeah. So, you know, guys, the top tax rate in 1913, when the income tax was first introduced into this country, the top tax bracket was 7%. But in 1944, it jumped up to 94%. What? In just 30 years, we went up to 94%. In the land of the home of the free and the home of the brave, we had a 94% tax bracket. Might we be going back that direction? You know, we're in a lower tax bracket now than we've been in our lifetimes. It's not always going to be that way. It's my prediction, as best as I can tell the future. Okay, so if taxes are going up, then all these 401ks and IRAs are a ticking tax time bomb. Okay, so how do we get out of that constricting plant pot and into something that helps us grow and thrive? I'd say it's a lot like this grapevine here on this trellis. You know, you don't want a constricting pot. You want a trellis, something to help you grow and spread your wings and fly. So if we're going to thrive over the next 10 years or 50 years or 100 years, whatever your time horizon, we've got to find a way to break out of the old and come to terms with the new. And there are some financial tools and contracts available in the marketplace that help you achieve what you're trying to do without taking unnecessary risk or being burdened with fees, volatility, and taxes. So if we're going to do that with our money, where it goes makes a big difference. In other words, where you let your money live makes a big difference. It makes a big difference to the plants in your garden. If it's in a tiny little pot or if it's in a beautiful garden like you see on this screen here. So where is your money living? Well, if it's going to go somewhere where it can thrive, I wrote down for myself a couple of key attributes. All right. So we need this plant here to have a few simple characteristics. Our money needs to be simple. It needs to be in a spot where it's simple, where someone easily could use it. You don't have to be a financial whiz like Scott to be able to use this thing. You need to have a predictable place to store and use your wealth so that it's there and it's built up and it's growing and it's on a guaranteed path to success. You'd want it to be easily accessible, meaning not a bunch of red tape or having to ask for permission to get your money out. And it need to have if it's going to be a contract with your future for financial sanity, it need to have an outcome determined before you even began. What do I actually mean by that? Well, before I even started on my venture, to go to LA, I make a path on Google Maps or whatever. And I know I need to turn left here and right there and left there and right here. To get to LA, I need to follow a certain path, but my outcome is determined before I even begin. Most people's financial life, there's no outcome. We just throw a little money into this private equity deal or that real estate deal or this mutual fund or whatever, and there's no outcome. But if you have your money stored in a place where it's not only able to have an outcome to determine before it even begins, but you can store the wealth there and you can access the wealth there, that's for me a picture of what financial sanity might look like. So let's get into kind of what this might look like. Okay, so money is really just a way to convert something you need in the future for something you can hold in your hand right now. So if you need to buy some wheat, let's say you're a baker and you need to buy some wheat for your bakery, you can see that the price is going to be going up on wheat in the future, inflation, whatever. So what do? You could say, hey, I'm going to buy all the wheat I can right now and put it in a giant jar in my back office, and I'll just spend that. But the problem is it might dry out, it might rot, bugs might get into it. Where do you put it all? That sort of thing. So commodities are very bulky, so you can't just store them forever. You need some sort of financial instrument that can lock in the price so you don't pay an arm and a leg next year when you need some more bread to build for your bakery. So a futures contract is essentially you paying a small fee today to lock in a price for that wheat in the future, a guaranteed future. So if you knew that the price of wheat was going up in the future, you could lock in your lower price today and then receive that wheat at the guaranteed price in the future. Now, futures contracts are really just a form of insurance, if you think about that. And when you get to a futures contract, we're not here to talk about futures contracts in the technical sense, like a security. But what I'm really going to return to now is the idea of a future contract. What is your futures contract? You're not probably a baker. You're probably not a wheat farmer. Most of us don't need futures contracts in our business or our personal lives. But what about the benefits of knowing for certain what your child's net worth will be when he or she goes to college, or what you could send to help them go to school or to start a business, or knowing that you'd have the ability to pay for your next car or vacation or real estate property or mortgage note, whatever you'd like to invest in? What about a peaceful, stress-free retirement that's locked in and solved for through a minimum guaranteed net worth every single year for the rest of your life? How would that change your outcome? How would that change how you feel about your financial life? So if you knew the outcome of the story and you knew what it would take to get there, wouldn't that motivate you, even excite you to jump out of bed every morning at 5 a.m. like Scott does, just bounding toward his goals, with absolute confidence and certainty that he'd reach his goal every single day? I mean, that changes how you see your overall financial life when you've got your outcomes determined before you even begin. Most mainstream financial products disappoint in this regard. So here are some of the pictures, and you're welcome to take a screenshot of this if you want to. I want to make sure I didn't miss one of my, you know what? The fourth key word is the word future. Okay. So don't forget the word future. Keyword future. Okay. So on this screen now, you can see a strengths and limitations of common financial products. I'm not going to get into all of these today, but just suffice it to say, when I was getting my CFP designations and going through my certified financial planning track, I had to dig deep into all of these and about 400 other financial products. And this is sort of my little checklist that you can certainly find and review for your own needs of the kind of characteristics of your money when you put them into bond funds or CDs or fixed annuities or cash or stock accounts, whatever. And here's the first page. And then here's the second page right here with some more options and ideas. Again, there's 400 plus places you can park your cash. I was dissatisfied with all of them. They all felt like that little pot killing that plant for various reasons: taxes, fees, volatility, and more. The only one that really met my requirements for my own personal financial life was a certain form of dividend paying or participating whole life insurance. Now, of all things in the financial universe, it met all of the requirements you see on the screen here: predictable financial results, no loss of capital, meaning it's always guaranteed. The cash is in there guaranteed. It grows on a guaranteed basis every single year. It beats inflation. It's a competitive rate of return. I can put whatever amount in I wish as I design the policy for myself. It's liquid and accessible cash for myself and for any reason, meaning there's no prohibited transactions like there are with IRAs. So I want to kind of jump into what this is and how this works. What is the bank on yourself method? Whoops. Okay. What is the bank on yourself method? It's using a little known variation of a modernized old financial asset. So it's a 200 plus year old financial product, which is life insurance, whole life insurance, but it's been modernized to be a lot more efficient and to be built from the ground up for living, not dying. It's a lot more fun to spend money while I'm alive. So that's my opinion anyway. So yes, I said whole life, but not the kind of whole life that Dave Ramsey talks about or Susie Orman talks about. With this type of policy, you don't have to die to win. Thank goodness. There are at least 8 living benefits that I won't spend every minute talking about, but I want to zip over a few. One, the cash value on these policies grow guaranteed every single year for the rest of your life. Guarantees are coming from the insurance company. So not tied to the stock market or the whims of real estate, whatever. So you can protect against inflation. So it keeps up with that cost of living increase and the insidious nature of inflation. It grows with a guaranteed increase every single year, regardless of what the market's doing. And of course, it is life insurance. So we're automatically solving that problem for our family, our kids, our favorite charity, whatever. All right, next, you can access the cash in this policy for any reason. There's no prohibited transactions. So I can rehab the rental property down the street, or I can rehab my own kitchen if I want to. I can send my own kids to college, or I can send them to Disney World, and the cash in the policy is mine to use and spend any way I wish. That's so unlike 401ks and self-directed IRAs and more. So the cash value is accessible. I mentioned that, but it's also accessible tax-free. If we designed it correctly, we can access the principal and the gains totally tax-free, both now and in the future. Tax law says that you can get the gains through policy loans out with no taxes due. Now, the money can be used for your investing, for real estate, mortgage notes, whatever. It could also be used for personal needs. And we're looking at companies that have been around for over 100 years. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I hope this is our last pandemic. But for a lot of these insurance companies, this is not their first rodeo. They've been through pandemics before, 1918. They've been through recessions, depressions, high inflation, low inflation, markets up, markets down, and they've been productive and profitable for over a century. That's pretty cool. All right, so the 5th key word is compound growth. Compound growth. Now, I want to talk about how you can become your own source of financing. And this could just, this slide has the capacity to change everything about how you make major purchases in your life. I would actually claim that, you'll actually be better off becoming your own source of financing than trying to chase a little bit higher rate of return on your mutual funds. So here's what I mean. You can use the policy as a source of money for college education, cars, real estate, starting or expanding your business. You can get access to the money as a policy loan, and that's a loan from the insurance company against your life insurance policy, okay? They don't have ability to say no. It's written right into the contract that you get your money anytime you ask for it. And they don't ask you a bunch of pesky questions or check your credit score. Usually within a week, they directly deposit whatever amount you asked for right into your bank account. And while you have that money borrowed out, the policy, the cash value life insurance policy, continues to grow as if you hadn't touched a dime of the money. Now, to me, that shocked me. This is unbelievable that you could do something like this. And while there may be some interest charged on policy loans, it's usually around over 4 years. Let's say you borrowed out 4 years to buy a car. You'd be charged about 1.5% to 2% interest on that money. Meanwhile, your policy is growing, compounded on the entire cash value. So if you had 100 grand of cash value, and let's say you borrowed out 30 grand to go buy a car, paid it back over 4 years, you'd pay about $700 in interest over that period of time. And at the same time, your policy is growing at 4, 5, 5.5% after tax cash on your money. So you've got an incredible arbitrage there. Even though there might be a little bit of interest paid, your interest growing on the cash is that much greater. So it works out in your favor to be even better than paying cash. All right, let's take a look at what that actually means and what that looks like. Okay, so here's somebody who didn't take loans. Here's somebody who did. Let's take a look at this because this is so huge, it could change everything. Here's a 35-year-old who's putting in $1,500 a month. And you can see the premium right there. Premium is just the word for how you get the money into the policy. So putting in $1,500 a month, 18 grand a year. In year one, they've already got $11,000 they could be using right away. And they have a death benefit of $648,000. Now come with me. Notice there's no loans being taken, a bunch of zeros in the middle of the screen there. Come with me all the way down to age 70. This person finally stops funding this policy. And I want you to remember the number $1.2 million. Okay. So this person never touched this money. They just socked it away in the policy, never thought about it ever again. But at age 70, he decides he's ready to take an income of $60,000, totally tax-free. And that comes out of the policy. So $1.2 million is the cash value at age 70. Don't forget that number. Now let's take a look at the exact same policy, but now this guy's taking $35,000 loans every 5 years. What would he be doing with that? Maybe buying cars, maybe doing some fix and flip properties. Maybe he's getting down payments on rentals, but whatever he uses that money for, he pays it back. In his case, he decides to pay it back over 5 years. All right. And you can see the interest. If you did the math there, the interest on that would be about 1.5% APR. All right. So at the same time that he's borrowing and paying back, look at that. His cash value still continued to grow on the entire cash value so that he didn't stop or he didn't break compound growth. He still has his wonderful $1.2 million in retirement. And he's got $60,000 waiting for him for his annual income in the future. How cool is that? So your money's doing two things at once. I cannot find anywhere else in the financial universe that does this with any manner of guarantees. Okay, what if you don't have 35 years like that wonderful chap did? Maybe you're, just a few more years older. Maybe you've got a lump sum and you don't want to wait around. Well, check this out. Here's a guy who dumps in 400 grand lump sum. And all of a sudden, he's got $378,000 that he could use right away for his investing or anything he chose. And as he pays, now he takes a loan in the first year for $360,000. And the loans are charged as simple interest all year long. So at the end of the day, he pays back about $5,100 on his terms per month. Maybe that was rental income, whatever. And then he pays that back over 7 years. His arbitrage, the growth on his money, was $53,000. That's even factoring in the loan interest he paid. Looks like it was a 2.1% APR over 8 years. That's not bad. I can't find a mortgage doing that. But the point is, his policy continues to grow so that his arbitrage, his spread, the money he's in the money on, he's in his favor is $53,000. Now he does it again and again and again. How many times would you do that? If you could, borrow some money, pay a little bit of interest, and then get back even more. The second time he does it, now his arbitrage is $107,000. It just keeps getting more and more efficient. The contract with your future. So I want to talk through now the uninterrupted compound growth. This is what it looks like visually. Most people invest by going into debt. So they borrow some money to get a car or a real estate deal. And now they're on that little train having to climb their way back up to net zero. and they get back to $0. They owe nobody, and they call Dave Ramsey and they scream, "I'm debt free," only to fall back down the ladder because now they got to get a new car or a new real estate deal, and they just live on that perpetual cycle of debt. The other option, of course, is to save money in a savings account or brokerage account or anywhere. But as soon as you spend money, boom, it's gone. And you broke compound interest, and you got to do it all over again. And so at some point, we have to say, what can we do that beats paying cash? What beats paying cash? Well, this policy appears to beat paying cash. In fact, it does beat paying cash because you get arbitrage. You can borrow against yourself, the policy, but the money continues to grow as if you hadn't touched a dime of the money. Now, is this perfect? Is this some mythical creature that we all just discovered just now? Of course not. This is a long-term contract with your future. This is not get rich by Saturday. Okay. So obviously that's a key piece. You have to be patient. It's not impatient capital. It is patient capital. And the premiums, of course, means you got to save. You got to pack some serious cash into this thing. Maybe it's a couple $100 a month. Maybe it's $1,500 a month. Maybe it's 400 grand. We help folks do all of those things and a lot more. So the other key piece, I'd say, don't do this if you're concerned about FOMO. You know what I mean? Where the next meme stock might allure you to invest elsewhere. This is, again, a parking space for safe capital. Okay, so here's a picture of a guy who's actually doing this and has done this for many years now. It's a client and a friend. So Dan was doing all the right things, but he had been through the tech bubble. He'd been through 2008, and he was sick and tired of being sick and tired. Here's his net worth from 1999 January until March of 2008 or 2009. Notice basically there's no change. Notice that, right? It's basically level. He'd had paper gains where he felt wildly wealthy, and then paper losses where he felt like a schmuck. But in 2009 March, he opened up his very first Bank on Yourself policy, and look what happens next. He tripled his net worth in just 10 years, and it continues to build to this day. So this is a steady climb upwards. There's no up and down sideways. And the red and the green you see toward the end, that's him borrowing from his policy to invest in real estate and more. So it's that slow and incremental change that creates massive results. It's that 1% improvement every single day, every single month that helps you get there. I think, what was it? Starbucks took 15 years to open its second store. To get to 2 stores took 15 years. How many stores do they have today? So as we kind of wrap up here, I want to talk about how nature beats entropy and gravity. Remember, if we're going to wage war against something as fundamental to the universe as gravity, for goodness sakes, and entropy, you see billionaires pushing against gravity just to touch space. How are we going to do it? So I think the best thing we can do is to mimic nature. The entire universe has a strategy to fight against entropy, tearing you apart, and gravity pulling you down. And the way nature does it is, I think, a model for us. And the way they do it is through the DNA of life. DNA. Could it be a coincidence that all of life is fighting against gravity and entropy using DNA? So the sixth keyword, if I can say that, sixth keyword is fractals. Fractals, not Fraggle, but fractal, because DNA is a fractal. And DNA is life's fundamental contract with your future. Okay? DNA is the fundamental, basic life contract. If you don't have DNA, you don't have life as we know it. Your body is repeating that contract, writing it over and over again toward your future. Okay. In fact, it's writing a contract as we speak right now, 300 billion times a day. That DNA gets rewritten. So the DNA is like a contract in your body. It determines your outcome. It's a storehouse of value, your personal information, who you are. But it's also, the DNA is easily accessible. So it's a storehouse of wealth, but it's also easily accessible for you to rewrite it and grab it and use it to be multiplied and spent into new cells and more. So doesn't that sound a lot like the money contract we've been talking about, this dividend paying whole life insurance? It's infinitely simple, but yet it's wonderfully complex. DNA even looks like a lattice, if you kind of look at that grapevine analogy I mentioned earlier. So consider the promise and contract inside that little acorn you see on the screen there. Just by looking at that acorn, you're not going to think it's some big, powerful oak tree. Just looking at that thing, it looks like a, pretty runty looking nut just laying on the ground or on a tree. But it has a contract with its future. It's writing its future right into every living cell inside of it. And you guys can do that too. In fact, you can do that with your money. It's that practical. So essentially, you can sit down with a true professional, Guys, I have met a number of people who thought they had a bank on yourself type whole life policy. But, there's a lot of other names for this strategy. Infinite this, living bank that, family wealth banking. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. There is only one trademarked, credentialed phrase that helps distinguish the professionals in the marketplace. It's the difference between an all-natural granola bar and an USDA organic granola bar, and that is the bank on yourself professional. If you don't have someone who is a bank on yourself professional designing these policies, guys, I've seen it too many times. They could put you back in the market through a variable life insurance policy. They could riddle it with high fees. It could be an indexed universal life policy, which gets more expensive the longer you keep it, which is like another time bomb all over again, back to fees and volatility, right? So don't just work with an, I can do that financial guru. You got to work with a bank on yourself professional. There's about 200 of us around the country, the United States and Canada. My firm is one of those. Humbly happy to be a part of that community and that revolution in the financial professional space. Guys, we're here to help you write a contract with your future. You can do it. Okay. So I think I'm finally done with everything. I hope I have a few minutes. I don't know if I do or not. So Scott, this is the link, guys. If you want to come chat with us, you can hop on our calendars by going to bit.ly/lake growth. That's bit.ly/LAKEGROWTH, bit.ly/lake growth. Scott, are you there? Maybe he's going to the website. Maybe he's going to the website to fill it out.
I'm typing in the link into the chat roll.
Thank you, sir. All right. Appreciate that. Thank you. If there's any questions, happy to answer a few. There may be a few. I can go read through a few of them here.
Yeah, there's a few questions here. Let me go to the chat roll first here.
Yep.
Tyshawn asked the first question, because how long after you start your policy do you get access to the cash value?
Yeah. Again, depends on who built it and what company it was with. If it was not built by a bank on yourself professional, very likely it might take you a year or two or more to have any kind of cash value that you could borrow. Had a guy who had to wait 5 years for a company to give him finally the chance to borrow against his policy. Another one took 10 years before it would even grow when you borrow against it. So these are very popular mutual companies that I would not recommend for bank on yourself. The type we typically work with, you can have access to the cash value and borrow against it even in the first month, just 30 days.
30 days. Wow, that's good stuff. Tiffany asked, is there a penalty for not paying the loan back in a particular amount of time?
No, there's no penalty at all. There is loan interest. There's loan interest that's charged. So you do want to find a good strategy to pay off the loan someday. If you never pay off the loan, guys, it's a non-recourse loan. And that means it's just deducted from your death benefit. The insurance company loves to give out loans because they already have the collateral, the death benefit. If I have a $2 million death benefit, and let's say I borrow out $1 million to go invest in some fun real estate, and I die that night, then my family gets 2 million minus $1 million loan to get my $1 million to my family tax-free. Okay. And the family also gets $1 million worth of real estate that I purchased right before I croaked. So there is no required repayment plan. There's no penalty to borrow the money or to not pay it back on a certain schedule. You are in control of when you repay that loan.
Great question. Good answer there for you. Okay. I'm just going through here. Tyshawn, you may have answered this right. Are the interest rates fixed?
They are tied to the Moody's Corporate Bond Index. So they have not changed in 15 years or so, but I'm actually looking forward to when they raise again, because when the loan interest rises, where does that profit go? Well, let's think it through. That's a mutually owned life insurance company, not publicly traded. So any interest I pay to the insurance company is part of the profits for the company that I mutually own. And so it comes back to us indirectly as a part of the dividends. So if they raise the loan rate on me, that means my dividends are going to be going up too. Does that concept make sense? Or should I
Yes.
go a little deeper?
Why don't you go a little bit deeper just for the heck of it?
Hey, Scott, let's say you and me want to go into business together. And let's say you and me are going to be starting a mortgage company together. Okay. Mortgage company. All right. So you and me are partners in this mortgage business and we want to be profitable. And hey, guess what? I need a mortgage. I want to go get my house, my family in a new house. So am I going to go to, mortgage company down the street, or am I going to come to our mortgage business to get my mortgage? What do you think?
You better be doing it in-house.
That's right, man. That's right. Yeah. Now, are you going to want me to repay my mortgage?
Yeah, that would always be a good.
Probably a good idea. Yeah. If we want to stay in business.
Yeah.
And so as I'm repaying that mortgage to the company that you and I own together, who benefits when I repay my mortgage? Who benefits?
The company.
Owned by you and me, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm indirectly benefited when I pay my own mortgage there. The same holds true with these mutually owned life insurance companies. The loan interest, which again might be, over 4 years, the interest is like 1%, 2% at the most on an APR on a 4-year loan on these policies. But that interest, that little bit as it is, goes to the company that you and I own together and then is distributed as a part of the dividends.
Nice. Norm asked a question. The loan interest is paid to the insurance company policy originator, correct?
Correct. The insurance company is where my loan is held. But again, the interest charged goes to the insurance company, which is a part of their overall business model. They're in the business of insurance. They're not wanting to be a bank, but they'll give me my cash value in the form of a loan if I want it. And my cash value does not leave my account. That's the key. We're using my cash as collateral and I'm getting the loan from the insurance company. That allows my cash to keep growing uninterrupted. You guys think about it, your house. If we all have houses here, let's say your house is worth $500,000 and you got a HELOC on it for $100,000, let's say, for a line of credit against your house. Zillow doesn't care if you have a mortgage or a loan on your house. The house is going to keep growing as if you hadn't borrowed against it, right? The same is true with these type of policies. When I borrow against my life insurance, if it's a non-direct recognition loan, if it's designed the bank on yourself way, then my policy will continue to grow as if I hadn't borrowed against the cash.
Makes sense. Terry asked a question. Is there a maximum age at which you can set up this whole life policy?
I think 85 actually is the last year you can get a whole life policy at the companies I know of, 85 years young. So in fact, there are some products, some whole life insurance policies out there that are actually better when you're 60 years old or older. So don't count yourself out if you got a couple extra candles on the birthday cake. Obviously, the point of this is building up cash. So we squeeze that death benefit down as hard as we can. It cuts a lot of the commissions out, cuts a lot of the expenses of insurance out. So you don't have to be in perfect health and you don't have to be a spring chicken to start one of these. But I think the last age to your question is 85 years old.
Okay. What are the various costs of a policy for someone over 60 who wants a benefit of $500K? I know that may vary, depends on the individual there for a little bit, but any various costs?
Well, let's see. I can maybe, I'll give an extra credit slide here for folks and say, ask such a great question. Great questions from your audience here, man. This is awesome. There must be some smart folks here. So give me a second. I'll actually show a picture of that for fun. So why don't we go to the next question while I'm letting this load up and we'll keep rolling for a second.
Can you convert a term life to a whole life policy?
Oh, wow. Another smart question. Yes, we did a whole podcast on this exact topic. If you want to, you guys go to Not Your Average Financial Podcast, anywhere you hear podcasts, and you can see that. It's, let's see, it's episode 187. So just a couple of weeks ago, and you can absolutely do that. Now, caution, kind of like religion, you want to know what you're converting to. Okay. Yeah. There's a lot of term insurance I wouldn't want to convert to the products that they offer at certain companies. So you want to make sure your term insurance is with the right company so that when you finally do convert it to bank on yourself, it's a true bank on yourself designed whole life policy. Mm-hmm. Okay. And very quickly, here's episode 91, where we get into that single premium idea. This isn't exactly the numbers this person, your previous question
Sure.
was asked, but here's a lady who's 61 years old. She's putting in her case, she put in $211,000. And notice in the first year, she doubled the gift to her family, $448,000 income tax free. And she's got liquid money of $196,000. And in fact, it breaks even and gives her gains by year 3. Now, quick story here, and I'll keep it very brief, but she used the cash in this. She sold one condo here in Chicago, one of those wonderful condos on the river. She sold one of those condos, put the equity of that, the sale equity, into this policy. So 211 went into the policy. She immediately borrowed it out within 30 days to go buy a new condo with a renter in it. And the policy continues to now grow. You know, she's a few years into this project now. The renter is paying her back. The renter is paying her back. And the policy continues to grow on this same schedule here. So now instead of just having one asset, the downtown condo, she has 2 assets, the condo uptown and this policy and the death benefit. So, you know, it's a great kind of it's kind of like nitro and glycerin, Scott. You know, it's better together.
So let me ask, let's look at, so basically, let's say she goes out and gets hit by a subway or the L train in Chicago.
There you go, man. Yeah, L train. Okay. Yeah.
The L train. And suddenly she hasn't paid back what she borrowed, you know? So that 196, 155, that gets deducted from the 448, 302.
Correct. Yeah. So the rest would be, you know, whatever, 240 something, or yeah, 240 something thousand would go to the family. Yep. Plus they'd keep the condo.
Plus they keep the condo. There you go. And can sell that there for you. Okay. Yeah, that's great. Plus it's a cash flowing asset and going from there. I hope that answers your question, Donald. Joanna Zhang asks, how long do I need to fund the policy before I can start having cash value to borrow against? I think you said that already. It was 30 days for what you're doing, right?
Yep, that's right.
Okay. So that's faster than closing on a traditional mortgage, man.
Yeah. Insurance is not exactly a speedy industry, but that is pretty quick.
Norm asked a question because how's the policy securitized? Does the insurance company have recourse?
Well, that's the thing. It's the safest investment the insurance company can make. When they lend me money or you money, they already have my collateral, my death benefit on hand. So it's a reducing of their liability. Because remember, the death benefit, pull this lady's numbers up here again. The death benefit is an asset to our families, but it's a liability to the insurance company. Okay. So when I borrow against this, whatever, it's kind of a relief to the insurance company because they kind of gave me my death benefit now and they don't have to give it to my family in the future unless I pay back that loan. And that's her plan, is to pay back the loan. So, you know, that's with the renter's money. So it's securitized or it's collateralized by the death benefit, which is already on the insurance company's books, making it safer than, you know, any bond the insurance company might buy or other real estate.
Right. Makes sense. It's like I don't want to say a CD secured loan that a bank has. It is basically that for the most part.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yep. Except, you know, in this case, there's a couple of other tax advantages, better growth than a CD would give you. But yeah, it's same concept.
Now, I got a question here from Stephanie. She goes, is there any health exams required or anything health-wise that would eliminate you from being able to qualify for it?
Again, I'm glad you asked because I forgot to bring this up. So age or health could keep you from being the insured on these policies. That doesn't mean you cannot own a policy. I have a gentleman who's a wonderful friend and a client. He's had quadruple bypass recently, and so he cannot get life insurance on his own life. But he owns 12 policies on his wife, his adult children, and all of his grandkids. And so he's the owner of the policies. He can manage the money. It's his cash. He'll spend it, whatever. And then if he should pass someday, he'll leave those policies as part of the inheritance he plans to leave his kids.
Okay. That makes really good sense there. I got another question here. What is the youngest you can be to borrow on a policy? Touch on this. Oh,
the youngest. Well, I'd be curious. I've got a 5-year-old daughter. If she tried to borrow from her policy, I'm going to guess that you'd have to be the owner and maybe you have to be 18 years old to own a policy. I don't know that question. That's a great one. I'll have to, Tyshawn, hop on my calendar. We'll chat about it.
Yeah, you probably got to be at least 18 to enter an agreement to be able to have one. But like you said, you can place one on your family or stuff like that, right?
Yeah, you can be the owner of a policy on your newborn. And then you've got, if you want it. Now, why in the world would you get life insurance on a newborn? A lot of folks ask. Okay, so yes, that's kind of morbid to think about, but imagine the power of that. And the Rockefeller family has done this for generations.
Yes.
And every kiddo gets a policy. And now we're talking 80, 100 years of compound growth, uninterrupted compound growth. And then you multiply that, because when one of them might pass, or a family member passes, all that money gets poured right back into the family bank, so to speak. So it's a great strategy.
That is a really good strategy. Julia's on here, says, if you're interested in booking a 15-minute consultation with Mark, you can schedule it here, guys. Use the link in the chat roll. It's lakegrowth.com/schedule with a backslash there for you. Use it, book a time. Mark is fabulous in every word, every sense of the term, fabulous out there for you.
It's the hair. It's the hair. Just kidding. Not much to speak of.
Okay. If you don't have a spouse or children, can you take out a policy on someone else, an aunt, an uncle, a friend, the neighbor next door?
Well, there's a couple of, your mortal enemy. That'd be a good one to. No, there's a certain limit. Let's just say that you have to have a relationship that is financially impacted if they should pass away. That's kind of the rules of the game, so to speak. So a spouse, yes. A business partner, definitely. A kiddo, yes, to some degree. Maybe not your neighbor necessarily. There's some limits to that one. Good question.
But your common law spouse for a lot of people that aren't married.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. Joanna asked a question: is it better to own a policy of a younger person as the insured than an older person because the premium will be lower?
Ah, great. Okay, so I'll keep it brief. I want to put as much premium into these as possible. How is that? Why would I even say that? I want more premium into these policies. It's the difference between renting and owning. So if I have a term policy, if I'm a renter, I want to get as little rent to that landlord as possible, because I'm not building wealth in that thing. But when I have a home or a real estate property, I can pour more wealth into that, building equity faster. Now, to answer your question, it doesn't exactly matter as much. The way we design these policies, the expenses of a 60-year-old and a 30-year-old will be approximately the same, because we're trimming down that death benefit quite a bit for the 60-year-old. The 30-year-old costs less, but the expenses will be the same. That might sound like gobbledygook, so I'll say it one more time. The expenses are, the costs are the same, right? Okay, so the cost per insurance or whatever, the expenses are less, but the costs are the same. Whether you're 30 years old or 60 years old, you can just trim down that death benefit, get less costs into the policy on an older person. But my goal is, how much money can I pack into the policy? Not how little can I get by with. So that's a mindset shift, if nothing else.
What's a starting amount? What's a minimum amount people are getting started off with? They don't have 200 grand or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I think a couple $100 a month, if you can set that aside, if you've got some money sitting in a savings account that you're not happy with its returns, if you get the child tax credit, for goodness sakes, has been a great source of money that a lot of people have been using lately. Help get those kids college funds started. Couple $100 a month, $250, $300, $350 a month is as little as it takes to do this, or as much as you can set aside and not spend.
Wow. So you're talking literally like $6,000 in a year if it's like $250 a month.
Yep.
Roughly. Wow.
Yep.
Or 3,000 or more. 250 times 12 is, wow. Okay. That's great.
Yep. $3,000, whatever a month. Yeah. Not too bad. But again, the more you can pack in, the more you'll have. It's kind of like a savings account, but don't feel intimidated that you have to start running at 60 miles an hour. Just crawl, walk, run, whatever you can do to become your own banker, your own source of financing.
Well, and that's the thing to look at. If you for every dollar you can put away and get it working, putting in a savings account isn't going to make any money, but putting something that's going to draw a return and then you tap into it and still have it grow. We all know that's different. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Hey, before we wrap up, I have to tell everybody the email address.
You're still good. You still got some time. You're not done yet. You had an hour 15 slot.
Okay.
So we're still good. We got 15 more minutes.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, all right. Well, I won't tell the email address then. If there's any other questions, Scott, or do we get through everybody?
I think we've gotten sufficiently through all the questions so far. So yeah.
Someone writes, what is this insurance called? Sam writes that.
Oh,
I
yeah,
guess I'll make it clear. It's dividend paying whole life insurance, and it's issued by a mutually owned life insurance company. And typically it needs to have paid up additions, and it needs to have non-direct recognition loans. So for anybody who didn't catch all that, don't worry. We've trimmed that down to just say bank on yourself type policies. Bank on yourself type whole life policies is all you need to Google. Or you can just go to our website, which is notyouraverageFinancialPodcast.com, and you can learn more about it there.
Good stuff there. What other questions do you all have for him? Brandon says, great presentation, Mark. Yeah, guys, that's why we want to start off with Mark, to help you guys give an opportunity. Really, I mean, note investing, real estate investing, many people are like, oh, how do I raise capital? And there's opportunities for you to raise capital, talk about this, but a lot of great ways is really start with what you've got coming in on a monthly basis, what you've got a little bit extra, start socking that aside and making things happen for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you think about it. If you're the guy or gal that's got 100 grand or 200 grand or whatever sitting in a whole life policy that's liquid and accessible within a week, and everybody else who's trying to bid for that in mortgage note investment or that real estate deal, who do you think is going to win? In the negotiations, it's going to be the cash buyer. It's going to be you when you've got a big pile of money sitting in a whole life policy, and everyone else is having to try to finance it or get other means to get access to cash. It's the people who have access to cash who usually get the best deals.
Yeah. But if you look at this, let's take it one step further here. Okay.
Yeah.
So what was the, forgive me, we throw some different rates out. What was the average growth rate you were seeing on the cash value side of this stuff? What's that on?
It's so boring. It's so boring. Some people, I mean, they love to hate on whole life insurance because they could get 12% in the stock market every year, whatever. I don't agree that you can, but some people believe that. The returns on whole life insurance can be anywhere from 4-5%, internal rate of return over time. And that's over time.
But let's look at that though. But let's look at this. One investor has 50 grand. They go out and invest it in a deal that pays them 8%. Mm-hmm. Another investor takes the 50 grand, puts it into the policy here.
Yep.
Then borrows against it to make the 8% plus plus the 4%, 4.8, whatever it was you said. Yep. Bonus of that aspect of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Exactly. And you got the life insurance death benefit there to double out to your family. And you got a parking space for when that real estate investment or whatever comes back to you. So you got to park that money somewhere. And you got tax-free access to the money in retirement, not just today, but in retirement too. So you're exactly right, Scott. It's a multiplier, isn't it? It just sort of layers on itself, which is kind of the mind-boggling part of this whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Tiffany says an awesome book to check out too is by Nelson Nash, Becoming Your Own Banker.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Tyshawn asks, when is the money taxed?
Yeah, good question. It's either taxed on the seed or the harvest, right? All things, it's either seed or harvest. So when do you think taxes are going to be lower, now or 40, 50 years from now in this country? So life insurance is taxed before you put money in 99% of the time. You can put the money into the policy after tax, just like a Roth IRA, and then it grows tax-free, and you can get access to it totally tax-free, both next month and also 30 years from now or whenever you need the cash.
Good stuff there. So Donald Ellington says, who said you can't save $2 million? Ha ha.
Yeah, that's right.
Tyshawn asks, are you on Clubhouse? Do you have a room on Clubhouse? Because this would be great for Clubhouse.
Yeah, it would be a great Clubhouse. I am not on, well, I have an account. I have only been on there once. My daughter has invited me to her backyard Clubhouse where there's tea, but that's the only real Clubhouse I'm invited to most of the time.
That's funny. Norman asked a question, with things changing and companies going out of business, how secure are these companies to invest in? I'm sure he's probably thinking about like the AIG debacle.
Yeah. Well, okay. So I'll keep this brief so we can keep moving through other questions but it's a really smart one. AIG is one of those companies that went through 2008 and got beat up pretty bad. When I looked into AIG, their insurance part of their business actually was part of the solution that got them out of bankruptcy and whatever. The insurance part of AIG actually solved the problem.
Wow.
The AIG problem was their investment side, the mortgage-backed securities that they had bought so heavily into. So they're a conglomerate and not the kind of insurance company I'd recommend. It's not mutually owned. Okay. So that means it's publicly traded on Wall Street, and they're allowed to do riskier things with money whenever they're set up that way as a conglomerate. A mutually owned life insurance company, 0 of them went through bankruptcy in 2008, whilst 450 banks went bankrupt in 2008. Okay, so let that kind of, I guess, set the scene for this. But the idea here is, if there was an insurance company that was to go bankrupt in 2021 when we're recording this, what would happen? What would happen to your money? Well, the insurance company would typically call the Department of Insurance and let them know, hey, we're in trouble. And the commissioner of insurance would come step in and serve the policyholders. And typically they'd move the contracts to another insurance company.
Right.
So you're really, the only change you'd see very likely would be just the change of the logo at the top of your annual dividend statement. Now, dividends aren't guaranteed, so you might lose a dividend in 1 year. But again, I wouldn't work with a company that just started 2 years ago.
Right.
You want to look at companies that have been around 100 years.
Yeah. I had a question for you on this one. It's a theory. Let's say you're using other people's money. Somebody's got 50 grand and they want to invest in a deal. Could you go take that 50 grand before buying the note, go put it in the policy, and 30 days later, pull the cash out to go buy that note and be the beneficiary on that policy? Such
a cool question. Super smart question. The one thing I'd want to make sure your investors knew was that this was happening. Okay.
Right.
Because if it all goes south, you always want to know, well, who they're going to be blaming. Right.
Yep.
And so as long as you've communicated that this is what you plan to do with their investment, you're putting it into a guaranteed, maybe safer than an FDIC insured bank account for sure, life insurance company, a contract, and they understand what's going on and they sign off on it, and your attorney likes it, then yes, that would work. So talk to them first, and in fact, a lot of times the investors will give you more investment. Why? Because they see the safe method by which you're investing capital. 2, didn't you just insure your life? If you croak, they're going to get paid back because it's life insurance. I had a guy just yesterday, we were talking about doing this exact thing. The investors of his syndication said, hey, we want to ensure that if you don't make it to the end of our investment arrangement here, that we're paid back, that we're made whole. And so they're using their investment, they're pooling it to buy a life insurance policy, almost $20 million life insurance on him. And that will be part of what is paid out to the investors should he not make it to the end of their deal together. So it's a great strategy, Scott. I love it. Just make sure everyone signs off on it. You're good to go.
Right. No, that's a thing. And that's the thing. I mean, because if you're sitting there, hey, we're going to borrow 50 grand from you and we're going to pay a 6 or 8% return based on the asset, whether it's a note or an REO or rental property. But we're going to take that and securitize it or insurance in case something happens to you or to you. Your family's taken care of and paid off, and we were able to go our separate ways and go from there, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and if it all goes south, you just want to have a couple of exit ramps. So yeah, even if you don't pass away, maybe you say, hey, this death benefit is collaterally assigned to Joe Bob, the investor, until I can repay Joe Bob. Right. And then that way he's made whole, whether you win or lose on that investment deal, whether you live or die, he's paid back and made whole.
I love it.
Super cool. Great question, man.
Totally cool on how to structure that there for you. I'm gonna have to run that by my guy doing some funds and stuff like that. That's
love
really
that.
Cool. What other questions, Mark? Besides this, what else do you do when you're sitting down with somebody? What are some things that they need to have in place when they're scheduling a phone call with you? What are some of the necessary documents or things they need to pull together?
Really, thank you for that. That's a great logistics question because, it can be intimidating just trying to figure out where do I start? And really it's just, we start with you. I just have a 15-minute phone call with you. It's nothing heavy. I don't need you to, pass a math quiz or anything to talk to me. We're just going to learn about you and what your concerns are, what your goals are, We have a 15-minute discussion to maybe answer any questions you have from today's presentation or just anything else about financial life writ large. This is one tool in our toolbox. It's not all we do. We're a full financial firm. So if you have questions about your IRA or about your tax strategy or about, your debt, paying off some old student loans, whatever, or your estate plan moving forward, we'll look at the full financial picture with you. And if this Bank on Yourself tool is a good fit, we'll tell you. If it's not, we'll be clear about that as well. And then we'll show you some other strategies that might make more sense for you. So, this is a tool in the toolbox. It should not be the only tool, but it can be an important one if we know how to use it well. So we'll have a conversation with you first, 15 minutes. Then we have a more in-depth discussion, a financial analysis that's one-on-one. All this is free. We don't charge a fee to do this. And we just learn more about kind of your goals, concerns, what does the word retirement mean for you, et cetera, et cetera. And I saw Kay asks, are you a fiduciary? And the answer is yes. I act as a fiduciary, as a certified financial planner.
How long did it take you to get your CFP, man?
Well, ask my wife. It was a couple of years, at least 2 or 3 years. I remember a lot of evenings, a lot of early mornings, and a lot of quick dinners and pizza.
Exactly. Donald asked a question, and this is a great question. I was about to ask this myself. Can you use self-directed money to apply for a policy?
Yes. I'm in the middle of actually writing a podcast on this exact topic. So Donald, be sure to subscribe. Shameless plug here, but subscribe to my podcast and you'll get the full answer here in about 3 or 4 weeks. So don't miss that episode. But to shortly answer, back in 1974, they passed the ERISA Act and IRAs were born. Okay. So IRAs are not even old enough to retire yet. That's how young IRAs are. Okay. So IRAs could do almost anything because they were issued by banks. That's how they got this through Congress back in the 70s. Banks were not allowed to offer life insurance back in 1974, and they still don't allow life insurance inside IRAs. That's just a no-no. But there's a ton of other no-nos in your self-directed IRA. There's lots of prohibited transactions. And I'll get into in this episode a couple of other bear traps I've found as I was doing some research and have worked with a number of self-directed IRA clients. But I would say find a way to roll out the money over a good period of time in a smart way, a tax efficient way, and move it into some of the money could go into life insurance if you wanted to. And then you can use that money in a much more free way. Again, self-directed IRA has a lot of prohibited transactions. I'll tell a quick story on this. One guy, he tried to convince the IRS that his retirement home, he bought his retirement home with his IRA, his self-directed IRA, and he called it a retirement home because the IRA is retirement money.
Yeah,
didn't work.
Can't benefit directly like that.
That's right. Yeah. Well, he lost, and the whole IRA became taxable in 1 year, along with an early withdrawal penalty. So just kind of be aware that self-directed IRAs, it's so much the government, when they name a certain something, it's usually hiding the true nature of what it is. Like Social Security. Is there anything secure about Social Security? They kind of hide the meaning. So self-directed may not be as directed as we think.
Mm-hmm. That's the truth. Well, another thing, you'd have to with your self-directed, you have to pull the money out, pay a penalty.
Yeah, that's right.
On taxes to convert basically back to cash versus
that's right.
A 401k. You'd have to pull it out and turn it into cash before you're able to buy the policy.
That's right. That's right. So some people say, hey, that's a deal. We're in the lowest tax bracket I'll probably ever be in. I don't like seeing people pay the penalty. So we'll try to avoid that if we can. And look up the phrase 72T. That's an interesting concept you might look into. 72T avoids that 10% penalty and still gets the money out of the IRAs and 401ks if you want that. Now, some people I work with will roll over IRAs, set up accounts, IRA accounts, and then we'll also do Bank on Yourself as a supplement. So it doesn't have to be all or nothing.
I love it. Got another question or comment here. I think it was Julia posted the podcast and it's NYA for Not Your Average financialpodcast.com. If you're out there listening on Clubhouse, like some of you guys are out there for you. So good stuff there for you. Now, is there a mistake you see people make that drives you bonkers early on, Mark? Is the $10 million question? You see people make a mistake early on that they just don't know they're making a mistake.
Wow. Yeah. Well, there's two sides of the log to fall off when you start banking on yourself. The first sign of the log to fall off is that you don't ever look at this. You see it like it's a vault that you cannot touch. I have a lot of clients who just pack that money away and they never use the money for loans. They never touch it. They never call on it. They never borrow against it. They never bank on themselves. And they're still paying cash for cars and vacations and real estate investments. They're still doing the old mindset. And I would say that's a mistake because, again, you finance everything you buy, whether you finance it with a banker or you finance it from your future. Whether you finance it with a bank or credit card or finance company, or you pay cash for something right now. And that means when you pay cash for something, you've lost the opportunity to grow that money into your future. That's financing it from your future. Quick story on this. I'll keep it brief, but how brief? Wait, we need to wrap up. We're
good. You can finish the story. So we're good.
All right. I'll keep it brief. If you saved money for 8 cars over your lifetime, over 50 years at $350 a month in a savings account, earning 5%, if you could find a 5% savings account, you'd end up with 8 old rusted cars at the end of your life. That's it, right? If you rode shotgun your entire life and just saved $350 a month for 50 years, you'd have at 5%, you'd have $900,000. That's the price of buying cars with cash. Mm-hmm. So when I say you finance it from your future, I'm talking millions of dollars with everything you buy with cash. Okay. So the first log side is never using the policy. The other way you can mess up a bank on yourself policy is by ripping all the money out of this thing all the time, never having a strategy to pay it back. And that's another mistake I see a lot of people make. They don't smartly think about paying their bank back. Who would steal from their own bank? But a lot of folks do. So it's really important that you work with the bank on yourself professional, like myself or any of our associates and advisors, because man, you can really mess this up if you don't have a game plan to borrowing and paying yourself back smartly over a reasonable period of time.
Yeah, I love it. I love this, Mark. Great stuff, buddy. Look forward to visiting with you next week about it. Guys, take the opportunity. Go to that link there, schedule a quick phone call. It's worth your future self will thank you.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Hey, and whether you're a Cubs fan or a Sox fan, I'm a big fan of yours, Scott. So keep up the great work. Guys, the email address, I almost forgot. Can I give that now?
Yeah. Let's put that in there real fast. Yeah.
It's hello@nyafinancialpodcast.com. I typed it, but Julia, you might want to put it in the chat there because I might have messed it up. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Scott. Yeah, hello@nyafinancialpodcast.com. Reach out to us, say hello, give us those 6 key phrases. And if you get them all, I won't even, spell check you on fractals. But if you can get them all, we'll get you that gift card.
Good stuff there, Mark. Well, man, thank you so much for adding some great value right off the bat here at Note Camp 2021, Mark. And we'll see you guys later. All right, brother?
Awesome. Thanks for your help and thanks for all your time.
Thank you, buddy.